So let's get started with this amazing session from Tate. In a hyper-competitive world with short attention spans, you have got seconds to capture people's attention. The person who grabs their attention and drives results wins. They win with their customers, employees, employers, peers, families, and themselves. So how does your pitch be heard above the noise? As it turns out, a specific method exists to present and communicate with poise, power, and persuasion. Once you grasp this process, you will win in all areas of your life. The process you pick up today will help get people to say, "Tell me more." Please welcome Tate with Pitch to Win, how to sell your ideas, services, and yourself in minutes.
Thank you. Actually turned on my microphone. That would be very, very helpful. When I was in high school, I was painfully shy. But fortunately for me, I actually had a coach, and it was my incredibly handsome cousin, Ricky. We called him Pretty Ricky. Now, let me tell you how pretty Ricky was. I grew up in Chicago, and we would go to parties on the weekend. And it didn't matter if we went to the north side, the south side, the west side. Whenever we would go to a party, girls would walk up to Ricky unsolicited, and they would hand him phone numbers. I hated Ricky, but I always hung out with him. And do you remember for Halloween how you would, separate your stash? You would sort the good candy from the fruit. Do you remember that? He would do the same thing with the phone numbers. He had a system. The girls he might call, he would put that in his right pocket, and the girls who were maybes, he would put that in the left pocket. And he would take these pieces of paper, he would throw them in the air, and he would separate the good candy from the bad candy. And now one time, I remember there's a piece of bad candy that fell on the floor. I almost separated my shoulder diving for that piece of bad candy. That bad candy was good candy. My cousin was spoiled. Anyway, one day, it's our senior year in high school. I go to South Shore High School in Chicago. We have two buildings, the north building and the south building. North building are the juniors and the seniors. It's the fourth floor, 11 o'clock in the afternoon. We're getting ready for third period. And he asked me the following questions. He says, "Eddie, when are you going to ask Lolita Barnes out to the prom?" You see, I had a crush on a girl by the name of Lolita Barnes. I'm going to need a minute, okay? And by the way, don't you look at me funny, because each one of you has a name that if that name comes up, you too will pause for the cause. Am I right? Anyway, Ricky asked me the following questions. He says, "Eddie," I said, I told him she would never go out with a guy like me. He said, "Well, why is that?" Well, number one, academically, she's ranked number 5 out of 490 seniors. She's smart. She's a cheerleader. She's popular. And she just got named prom queen. She's beautiful. She'd never, ever go out with a guy like me. And he said, "Eddie, let me ask you a couple questions. Question number 1, is she going out with you today?" I said, "No." "If you ask her and she says no, will she be going out with you in the future?" I said, "No." So he says, basically, your circumstances haven't changed. Is that correct? I said, "Correct." He said, "But Eddie, if you ask her and she says yes, then everything changes." He said the following: "Don't you say no before they say no. Never tap out. Never take yourself out of the game. Always ask." I'm going to repeat that again. Don't you say no before they say no. Never tap out. Never take yourself out of the game. Always ask. Hall of Fame speaker Patricia Phipps says the following: the answer is always no unless you ask. The answer is always no unless you ask. So armed with this new information from my cousin, Pretty Ricky, I approached Lolita Barnes. And guess, my friends, who went out on the senior prom with Lolita Barnes? That's right. You guessed it, Pretty Ricky. Well, you're not paying attention. I told you he was pretty. Now, I'm only kidding. She actually said yes. And I can tell you this, that was a defining moment in my life. It was a defining moment in my life. In fact, I can trace all my successes to that point, to that one yes in my life. When she said yes, it changed everything. You know, like how Toastmasters has changed your life? That's what it did for me. I can trace all the successes. I'm a former executive in the computer industry. I've had over 2,000 people work for me. I have sold over $500 million worth of products and services. I've created one business unit that sold $265 million and another one that was sold for $1 billion. All those came from that one session, that one yes. Don't you say no before they say no. Never tap out. Never take yourself out of the game. Always ask. Is this good stuff? Yes. Please turn to your neighbors and tell them, this guy's good. Okay, everyone please stand. Everyone please stand. You have pizza in your stomach. That's what's happening here. Okay, just march in place for like 2 seconds, all right? All right, you may be seated. You may be seated. All right. And they're passing out handouts as well, so. I'm going to talk about some raving fans or successes that people have gotten by incorporating some of the ideas and tools and techniques that I'm talking about here today. Did I drop something? Okay, I'm good. There we go. An engineer won a $2 million contract by using one idea, one concept I'm going to share with you today. An author was able to triple her income. We're talking 6 figures and beyond by using one idea, one concept I'm going to share with you today. A job hunter got their dream job in the middle of COVID. In the middle of COVID, she got her dream job by using one idea, one concept I'm going to share with you today. A high-tech executive increased their pay by over $100,000 by using one idea, one concept I'm going to share with you today. And finally, a project manager doubled his salary. He had a 5-figure salary. He doubled to a 6-figure salary. Plus, there's something else very special about him, and I will share that in a moment. Raise your hands if you're curious. Please tell your neighbors you're in the right place. By the way, none of these people are salespeople. None of these people have any sales experience. They have no sales background. And here's the good news about that. That means that this is a learnable skill. This is a learnable skill. Every one of you can use these tools, these strategies, and these techniques to influence people ethically. Influence people ethically to get what you want out of life. Does that make sense? All right, let's move on. I love this book. It's called One Perfect Pitch. And what is a pitch? It is finding that one thing that makes your idea incredible and opens up the door to a longer conversation between you and your target audience. By the way, when you're pitching, the only thing you're trying to do is get to the next step. The phrase is the next step. What's the phrase?
The next step.
The next step. Okay, that's all you're trying to get to. I love this quote from Daniel Pink. He has a book called To Sell is Human. And he said, there's a startling statistic in there. 40% of our time at work is engaged in persuading, convincing, and influencing. For the engineers in the room, that's 24 minutes out of every 60 minutes. 24 minutes out of every hour of your life, you're spending persuading, convincing, influencing. You know what that means? This is a life skill. This is an essential, it's a survival skill in order for you to be successful, not only in your careers, but also your life as well. So, what are some of your frustrations in terms of persuading or influencing others? Anybody? What are some of your frustrations?
The other guy doesn't
What's that?
The other guy doesn't get it.
The other guy doesn't get it. Thank you. What else? Okay. Not speaking the right language. And how do you mean by that?
I hear the terminology, so like I should try to get to know him, see where he's coming from.
Okay. So you should get to know the person to see where they're coming from. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Not have the same mindset as like teenager kids don't have the mindset as parents.
Okay, so not having the same mindset. Would you agree that parents don't have the same mindset as teenagers? Yes? Okay, all right. Yes?
Not able to make the connection.
Not able to make a connection. Thank you. Yes, sir? Not getting feedback, so you don't know where you stand. Thank you. Yes? Overcoming preconceptions. Thank you. Yes? Coming across as manipulative. Thank you. Yes? Not being able to show the value to the other person. And yes?
Running out of time, you're on deadlines and coming up.
So you're running out of time, you're on deadline, and you don't take the time to get to know that person. You don't take the time to figure out what it is they're trying to do or trying to accomplish. Yes, sir? Being nervous and afraid. By the way, fear stops us all. Fear stops us all. The only thing between you and the life you crave is the fear that's in front of you. Just like, for example, what did I describe? Well, Lolita Barnes, she's smart. She's popular. She's beautiful. She would never date a person like me. I took myself out of the game. I wasn't even playing. I deliberately benched myself. This is a rhetorical question. I'm not expecting an answer. But have you ever deliberately benched yourself? Have you ever deliberately took yourself out of the game? And how was that working for you? Anybody else? Anybody else? Yes, last one.
Being able to listen to executives to hear what they say rightly.
Okay, being able to hear executives. By the way, here's something else. Have you ever had the experience that you heard what someone was saying, but the real communication was taking place in between the lines? Have you ever had that experience? Not being able to read the individuals, reading people. So I'm going to share with you some, again, tips, techniques, and strategies in terms of how you can actually accomplish that. In a moment, you're about to mix and mingle, okay? Specifically, you have, by the way, I live in Las Vegas. So you have been invited, I christened thee, you're all in Las Vegas with me, okay? You're in Las Vegas. And you have been invited to this mix and mingle situation, a society networking mixer. It's going to have 300 of the top decision makers in Las Vegas, all right? Hold back your enthusiasm. All right? In a moment, what you're going to do is you're going to introduce yourself, and I want you to introduce yourself to someone you do not know. Okay, introduce yourself to someone you do not know. And what I want you to do is like, introduce yourself. Hey, my name is, whatever your name is. And then ask the question, what do you do? And then listen to the person and then be courteous and return the favor and ask that person what they do. And then if there's enough time, introduce yourself to someone else. Does that make sense? Okay, so how do you determine who's going to go first? The person whose middle name is the closest to Z. That will be the person who will go first. All right, so everyone please stand, please stand. Please introduce yourself to someone you do not know and ask the question, what do you do? Thank you. I'm good. All right, you may be seated. You may be seated. You may be seated. Forgive my breathing noises there. So, question. Here's a mini poll. Raise your hands if you heard someone give a title. Just raise your hands if you heard a title. Okay, raise your hands high so I can see you. Okay, thank you. All right. Raise your hands if you had some jargon. You heard some jargon that you did not know what it meant. Any jargon? Okay, thank you. All right. Raise your hands if you had to Google or ChatGPT what that jargon was. Anybody here? Okay. Raise your hands if you heard they told you a story. If they told you a story. Okay, thank you. Or did they give you a sentence? Did they give you a sentence? Okay, you heard sentences. By the way, if they gave you a story instead of a sentence, they're not clear. If they give you a story, not a sentence, they're not clear. Okay? Did you hear something that was cute and clever, but it wasn't clear? Again, you had to chat GPT it, whatever that was. By the way, cute and clever is the enemy of clarity. Cute and clever is the enemy of clarity. And when you're pitching your idea, your product, and your service, clarity, clarity, clarity. Repeat it with me, please. Clarity, clarity, clarity. Please tell your neighbors, clarity, clarity, clarity. You want people to understand what it is that you do or how their lives can be improved by your products, your services, or what you're trying to accomplish. Some of you probably didn't see this coming. I was going to quote the rap star, Eminem. And he has this great line. He says, if you only had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, one moment, would you capture it or would you let it slip? Now, that's not how he actually says it. Does anyone here? What? No, I'm only kidding. we have any budding rappers here? But it's a powerful statement. If you only had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted at one moment, would you capture it or would you let it slip? Are there opportunities in your life that you let slip? In 2018, I was in Las Vegas at something called the Consumer Electronics Show. It's one of the largest conventions on planet Earth. If you ever get a chance to go, go. In fact, they were talking about artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, 5G, all the things that we now are living with back in 2018. Everything that we are living with today. They were talking about right back then. In fact, this is a friend of mine. She is a Hall of Fame speaker. Her name is Marilyn Sherman. And Marilyn was, to give you an example of some of the things which were going on. So she's in a one-person car. One-person electric car. And this is back in 2018. So I don't have the volume on. It's not necessary, to be honest with you. That is both the driver's seat and the passenger seat. Anyway, so they also have something, if you ever get a chance to attend this, you must attend the last gadget standing. It is remarkable. What it is you have these 10 finalists, these people who have ideas, strategies, etc., they're trying to get funding for, and the audience votes on their ideas. The audience votes on their ideas. So let me give you an example of that. So back here, these are thermometers. The MC is about to call out the name of one of the contestants. The thermometer is going to change. To give you an idea. And again, I should have put on the sound, but so you see the first one, it changed to red. So that's the first contestant. Then he's going to call the second contestant. This is something called the Vesta board. Okay, so they didn't like that one as much. Something called the Jedi Challenge. Okay, so they did this for all of them. Anyway, there was a contestant, and this contestant, he had a product, it was called Modius. And this was his pitch. Neurovalence is a technology company leveraging proven innovative neuroscience and consumer wearables to create meaningful improvements in people's lives. Their first product, Modius, is a non-invasive headset which helps people to achieve leaner, healthier bodies through vestibular nerve stimulation. Now, without ChatGPT in this, what is vestibular nerve stimulation? And no, it is not porn. Does anybody know? I struggled. Now, needless to say, here's a shocker, he did not place. After the contest was over with, I walked up to him and I said the following. I said, I've been really struggling with what your product does. I think this is what it does. That says, Modius helps people lose weight without diet, surgery, or exercise. He looked at me and said, that would have been a better way of saying it. And the question for you is this. When you're making your pitch, are you making the Modius mistake? This is the result. You want to talk about outcomes or results or what people get. This over here is jargon. By the way, who cares about the company? By the way, is it a big mistake to talk about your company first? Big mistake. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Remember, so what? Who cares? What's in it for me? Remember that. Remember that. No one cares about the company, okay? What they do care is their own self-interest, and that's just human nature. People aren't wrong, they're not bad, it's just human nature. Don't try to fight it. The company that did win is called Orcam My Eye 2.0. Here is their pitch. We help people with vision difficulties to read and see. Does anyone understand that? Specifically, we help them read any text, recognize family, colors, and currency denominations. People who have challenges seeing, they have difficulties with currencies and denominations. They actually tested this product. So there were people from around the world, and they actually had this device attached to a microphone, and they had the device read whatever it was, and it actually executed, if you will. It was absolutely remarkable. But the thing that I thought was their genius is how easily they described what it is that they do. And by the way, I've seen them on TV, online, etc., and they're making dramatic health improvements for people around the world with this device. So the thing I'm inviting you to do, or think tweet, or it's X now, isn't it? Is that right? So think X. I'm still going to go with tweet. I'm going to teach you as a tool I've created, it's called a verbal business card. And what is a verbal business card? Well, let's go back over here. We help people with vision difficulties to read and see. That's a verbal business card. It's a short, sweet description about your products and your services and what you do and what you provide for others. The verbal business card is not an elevator pitch. Its only purpose is to start a conversation. Its only purpose is to see if someone's interested in what you might have to offer. That's the only purpose of a verbal business card. Okay? Now, let's see. You guys have handouts here, yes? You got your handouts? Did everyone get a handout? Okay, perfect. And then I think they've got them online as well. So a lot of this is already written. You don't have to write down the notes. Okay, so just look on your handouts to make sure that there's things you don't have to write down. Okay? The purpose of a verbal business card is a conversation starter. That's it. If they're interested, then you can give your 1-minute pitch. Later on today, I have a template here on the last page on how you can give a 1-minute pitch. In fact, you can use that for homework, and you can use that template whenever you have something coming up right away. Okay? You want to get a fast yes, tell me more, or fast no. By the way, no is okay. I love no's. You know why I love no's? is because I won't waste any of my life force or energy trying to convince that person. And I can move on to the next person who will tell me yes. Are you with me? Okay, so don't take it personally when someone tells you no. Thank them. Look for the no. That's great, because you're not going to waste your time. By the way, you're not selling anything. The only thing you're doing is selling the next step in the process. Hey, let's get together. Whatever makes sense. Use your best judgment under all circumstances. Maybe we should get together. Maybe I can send you a report. Maybe I can send you one of my books. Maybe I can send you to a website. Whatever you deem to be the next logical step, that's what you should do. So here's some hints about creating your own verbal business card. Number one, who plus action. We coach, we help. Or I coach, I help. You decide which pronouns you like to use. I want you to circle this. I want you to highlight this. Number one is to share the results or the problem that you solve. It's not your title. It's not something cute or clever. It's the result that people get by working with you. And it's only one result. You may provide a lot of other results, but I want you to focus on your best result, whatever that may be. No titles, no jargon, no industry insider language. You're not an engineer, you're not a speaker. Your goal here is to arouse curiosity and to amp up the FOMO factor. FOMO is that fear of missing out. There's an old movie. It's called When Harry Met Sally. Is anyone familiar with this movie? What's the most famous line from that movie? Yes. And what's the second most famous line? I'll have what she's happy. That's what you want. You want people to say, I'll have what she's having. That's funny. So here's some examples. That is really, really funny. That's the first time I ever got that answer. And it is the accurate answer. Yes, it is. So I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. It was in California. And they had this tradition where people would stand up and they would describe to the rest of the crowd what they do. And everyone's, they would give their titles out and the name of their companies and all this other stuff. And this one woman stood up and she says, I help men get compliments. And she sat down. That's all she did. At the first break, the line went out the door. It's like, okay, well, what do you do? What do you do? As it turns out, she's a personal stylist. But had she stood up and said, I'm a hairstylist, do you think she would have had that line? She talked about the results that others get by working with her. I create freedom. This is how I hired my virtual assistant. Some of you, by the way, for those of you who bought my product, thank you very much. I appreciate that. You're going to get a couple of emails from Summer. Her name is Summer Zivko. So, if you get that email, take it out of spam. It's a very important message. But this is how she sold me. She says, hey, I'm going to help you create more freedom. I'm going to help you get focused on the things which are important in your business. Sold. And we've been working together for about 7 years now. Have you ever gone to a party and all of a sudden you're talking to someone and that person is an insurance agent? And all of a sudden, you do everything you possibly can to get away from that person. Have you ever had that experience? Well, anyway, I was at a party once, and this guy said the following. He said, we train people to retire rich. People were throwing cards at this guy. It was people 4 deep trying to get to him. He's a financial planner. He's an insurance agent. But what he did was he described what others get by working with him. Are you getting this? Does that make sense? And again, the purpose here is to have a conversation. I like this one. We have a weight loss match service app. It pairs personal trainers and gym goers. I thought that was unique and different. That made me curious. I call this one the $1 billion verbal business card. The $1 billion verbal business card. Are you curious? This is Sarah Blakely. She's a founder of a company called Spanx. This is how she started her business. She used to work in Atlanta, Georgia, and she sold fax machines. Now, if you work in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's in the middle of summer, and she wore white. Now, if you wear white in the middle of Georgia and it starts, there's humidity, there's some things that you might expose that you don't want to expose. Anyway, so she got this idea for this product that actually stops that particular issue. And she was trying to meet with a buyer, her name is Diana, with Neiman Marcus in Dallas, Texas. It took her 2 years to get an appointment with Diana. But finally, Diana said, okay, come on down. Anyway, so she's having a conversation with Diana. She's making her pitch to Diana, and she sees that she's losing her. And all of a sudden, she says to Diana, hey, come with me to the ladies' room. The buyer says, what? She says, come to me into the ladies' room. I've got something that's going to make your butt look great. She followed her, and the rest, as they say, is history. That one line, I have something that's going to make your butt look better, launched a $1 billion business. And here's the thing I want you to get. She talked about the results that people get by working with her. Am I beating this into your brain? Okay. All right. I want you to get this. All right. So it's your turn now. You're going to create your own verbal business card. So there's some space with your handouts. And for those of you online, it's a fillable PDF. You can do the same thing. And again, I'm going to keep this up here. One sentence, describe what others get by working with you. Number one is, what results do they get? What problem do you solve? Do not put a title down. Put down the outcomes or the results that people get by working with you. Again, no titles, no jargon, no industry insider language, and try, if you can, to create some curiosity. This is, in writing or content creation, this is what we call your sloppy first copy. Your sloppy first copy doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be done. Are you with me? Okay, you guys ready for the challenge? Okay, before you do the challenge, everyone please stand up. Please stand up. That pizza's really kicking in. All right, just stretch, just stretch. All right, you may be seated. You may be seated. All right, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to work on this. This is your maker time. You're gonna have 2 minutes to work on this. Begin. Working individually. And I think it's on page 3. Page 3 is that right? Or page 2? Page 2, page 2. Page 2. All right, here's what I'd like to do now, is get into small groups of 3 or 4, your choice, 3 or 4, and I'd like you to just share what you've written so far, and then take some feedback from your table mates. Take some feedback from your table mates, all right? So everyone, let's do this exercise standing up. So stand up, stand up, stand up. Get the blood flowing, and get together with 2 or 3 people, and share your verbal business card, version 1.0, and get some feedback.
Have a business. Like I work at a coffee.
All right, you may be seated. You may be seated. So, are you a prisoner? Are you a prisoner?
No.
Is this your daughter? Is this the one you told the story about?
She's my daughter.
Okay, okay. Well, no, I'm not going to embarrass you. Great story, though. Love it, love it. All right, here's the next step. Next step. Now that you've had a little time to practice, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back to our party, okay? I want you to go back to our party, and I want you to test your verbal business card. So this time, you don't have to have it memorized. If you have it written down or if you have it on your phone or device, etc., you can read it for the purposes of this exercise. I don't expect you to memorize it, okay? But I do expect you to read it. So this time, what I want you to do is, we're at the same party, remember that, all right? And this time, I want you to introduce yourself to another person or two testing out your new verbal business card. Is everyone with me? All right, so please stand. Mix and mingle with some other people, people you do not know. Go.
So I've been working on my pitch, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that it's too little.
Testing, testing, testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay. You may be seated. You may be seated. Give your new friend a fist bump and say, I've got this. All right. You may be seated. I can't get them to stop talking. Okay. You may be seated. You may be seated.
Where's your $10 symbol?
I'm trying not to overdo it, but by the way, that works too. Who heard an interesting verbal business card? Okay. And whose was it? Okay. He pointed at her and she's like, who are you looking at? And would you, do we have a mic? We have a mic? Yes. Would you mind sharing your verbal business card? Would that be okay? Okay.
So what I said is, I am a financial professional. I keep my CEO and CFO out of trouble.
Did you hear that? Did you hear the reaction? We got an emotional reaction. That's what we're going for. Okay, microphone? Yeah. Please stand.
I trained ChatGPT to work for you.
Did you hear that? That was, no. Did you hear what I call it an audience utterance? Whenever you get an audience utterance, that means emotionally you have connected. Did you hear everyone go, oh? Okay, and repeat it, because some people didn't hear it. Could you repeat it again?
I trained ChatGPT to work for you.
Nice, okay. I was like, yeah. Share with the one that sucked.
So actually that's true. He helped me.
Okay.
So I started with my first.
Please hold your mic up.
My first iteration was, I can train any machine learning models to solve any data problem, something like that.
Okay. So who wants some of that? But do you like this? Do you like the first one better? I mean the revised one. Absolutely. Okay. Who else has another one? Who has another one? Okay. We're pointing at this gentleman right here, and then the gentleman in the back. So the gentleman in the hat, I guess. Yes. So please stand. Yeah.
I give people peace of mind.
You give people peace of mind. Okay. I'm curious. How do you do that?
Educate them in the insurance and investing for the cash flow.
Okay. All right. Good enough. But here's one thing. I'm going to invite you. This is not a criticism. I'm going to invite you to keep revising. Because the first two, we have audience reactions. We got emotional reactions. So the thing I'm inviting you to do, and I don't know what the revised version looks like, is to keep editing. And by the way, this is what you need to do. And you asked me, where'd she go? She's gone. Okay. She asked me a great question. And that is, how do you know what's going to work? And the answer is, you must constantly test. Test your verbal business cards in everyday, ordinary conversations. See how people react and how people respond. All right, who's next? Okay. Please stand.
I can tell stories about you and make you popular.
I can tell stories about you and make you popular. All right, I'm listening. But she's got the curiosity factor. I'm curious. It would make me want to ask, well, tell me a little bit more about that. Okay. All right. Who's next? In the back here, the gentleman in the back, and we have a hand in the back over there as well. Okay. Okay. And over here. Okay. So here, and then up here. Okay. And then here. Okay.
We give you second chance in life.
Did you hear that? We got an audience utterance. Did you hear it? An audience utterance is an emotional connection. An audience utterance is an emotional connection. Are you curious? The answer is, of course you are. Thank you. Okay? The gentleman in the blue shirt there, and then we're going to come up here, and then we're going to go here.
I keep you safe from drunk drivers on Saturday nights.
Sign me up. I live in Vegas, where it's the king of the crazies. All right, I'm curious. Are you curious? Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, that's a good one. All right, we're going to come here, and then with you?
Yes, for over here.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, right here? Okay. Hmm?
So I help Android phone become more popular than Apple.
Boo. I'm sorry, that was my inside voice.
That means this is something worth trying.
Absolutely. Did he get audience utterance?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Are we curious? Absolutely. Absolutely. You said over there. Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right.
We let people feel as good as they can.
What do you think?
I didn't hear it. Didn't hear it.
But we saw smiles. By the way, audience utterances are not necessarily vocal. So in this case, I saw smiles. I saw people shaking their heads. By the way, that's another form of audience utterances. By the way, this is applicable not only in business, but also in your speeches. So I want you to pay attention, observe when you're giving your speeches to this idea, this concept of audience utterances. If you notice in the World Championship of Public Speaking, guess what? Almost every single speaker is able to produce an audience utterance. And if they don't, it's unlikely that they'll win. That's just my opinion. Make sense? Anybody else? Going once. Oh, wow. We have several others. Okay, go.
We help real estate agents become mayors of their local area online.
So repeat that again.
We help real estate agents become mayors of their local area online.
Okay, so let me know. Yes, yes, no? What do you think? Okay, so I'm hearing no's. Okay, but again, sloppy first copy. Okay, so tell us about your business a little bit. So what do you do?
I help small businesses get found online through video.
Okay, I actually like that one better. Because it's clear. It's clear. I mean, I'm not trying to be judgmental. Please hear that, okay? But I think what you just described to me is clearer than the first one. Would you agree? Yes. Okay. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Over here, and then finally over here. Oh, okay. Here, and there. You guys like playing this game, don't you?
I help make medical devices safer to use.
Okay. Now, that one's relevant for me. And the reason it's relevant for me is I had an aunt and an uncle who had diabetes, and they both died from infections because they didn't take care of things properly. So even though I didn't get an audience utterance, I immediately thought of my family members. So that one resonates with me. So I just want to share that with you. Anyway, so thank you for that. Okay. Yes. And let's get your mic. And then we got one more. There was one more in the back. Who was that? Oh, we have two more. Okay, and that's it. That's it. This is my last.
We help young professionals like you become better leaders in 24 hours.
All right, I'm listening. And thank you for calling me a young leader. I appreciate that. You know, he had me a young leader. He had me at young. Okay.
I can help you cut your water bill by 75%.
Ooh. In the West, that's a big deal. Wouldn't you agree? Especially, I live in Vegas. Are you kidding me? That is huge. That is huge. There's one other person I saw in the back, and this is the last person.
We help turning your fear to to empowerment.
We help turn your fear into empowerment. Okay? I see some people shaking their heads, and then I hear some people, eh. So I'm inviting you to come up with multiple versions and keep testing. Again, there's no judgment here. This is her first time doing this. Are you with me? You know, some of you, you hit the jackpot the first time around. Congratulations. For example, here's one of my verbal business cards. I help executives breathe life into their business presentations. That version took 6 months of testing. 6 months of testing until I finally came up with a version that people consistently said, well, Ed, tell me a little bit more about that. They either gave me a no, they weren't an executive, or, well, I am interested in that, and going from there. So again, thank you for that. All right, so was this exercise helpful for you? Okay. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I paid them to start the applause, by the way. They are well-paid people. All right, let's move on from here. So we've heard some examples. The next thing is, here's what I want you to do right now. When someone says, tell me more, or they express an interest in your verbal business card, remember the purpose of a verbal business card is to start a conversation. That's it. It's a conversation starter. That's it. You're not trying to sell anybody anything. You're just trying to start a conversation to diagnose before you prescribe. The next thing they're going to say is, tell me more. So from now on, this is what you're going to do. Now, I have coached hundreds of speakers and entrepreneurs. Hundreds. And this is when they, what I say, they show up and they throw up. When they say, tell me more. Well, hey, I've got this program. I've got this keynote speech. I've got this speechcraft. I've got this yada, yada, yada. And they, This is when they make a mistake. Here's what you're going to do from this day forward. You're going to say, let me ask you a few questions. Repeat it with me, please.
Let me ask you a few questions.
Please tell your neighbor what it is. Let me ask you a few questions. Turn to your other neighbor.
Let me ask you a few questions.
You don't know if you can help them or not. So, for example, when I tell executives I help them breathe life into business presentations, well, how do you do that, Ed? I said, well, let me ask you a few questions. Tell me about some of your presentation opportunities. Are you appearing on MSNBC or Fox Business News? Are you speaking in front of the stockholders? You know, what are some of these, what type of presentations are you giving right now, and where do you feel that you're struggling? So I'm asking diagnostic questions. The thing I would invite you to do is ask a who, a what, or a how question. If you don't know what question to ask, always ask a what or how question. What or how questions are open-ended, and they don't put people on the defensive. The danger of why questions is it makes people defensive, depending on your tone. So if you don't know what question to ask a what or a how question. And what areas do you feel would you be interested? What type of presentations do you give? Does that make sense? All right, is this good stuff? So please update your keepers. Please update your keepers. What are some ideas that you have found of value so far? Again, a keeper is nothing more than an idea that you like, or it's an action you plan to take. So please update your keepers. What are some ideas from this session that you like, or some ideas from the session you plan to implement? Are you my chat master? Yeah. Okay.
And I think we should also check with online people
Yes, yes. Yes, exactly. Okay, I thought I lost my chat master. So if they could type in what some of their keepers are, and then we'll start off with them. Okay, great. So my friends who are online, I apologize for ignoring you. I thought I had lost the chat master. If you could type in what are some of your keepers from this session, and we'll start off with those. In a moment, I'm going to have you stand and talk to someone else who's, someone different, not someone your friends or you're hanging out with, and please share your keepers. So it could be as simple as just standing up and turning around and talking to the individual. All right? So everyone please stand. Please share your keepers and your action ideas. With someone new and different.
To the online people, right?
I thought it was sent earlier.
So, okay, Jane, how do I give the online people Ed's handouts? They're like,
We can't share it.
I had emailed it days ago, and I don't know what happened to them.
We have 5 minutes after your session.
Mm-hmm. See? What's that?
Would you be available for 5 minutes after you are done with the session?
A couple. I will be heading out to the airport. Yeah, so a couple minutes. Yeah, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. Clap your hands 2 times if you can hear my voice. Clap your hands 3 times if you can hear my voice. You may be seated. You may be seated. Man, it's hard to break up Toastmasters from talking. Wouldn't you agree? All right. Online, what are some of your keepers? What are some of your keepers?
okay, yeah. My keeper is the verbal business card.
The verbal business card. Thank you.
Verbal business card. Clarity, clarity, clarity. And then, let's see. Yeah, pretty much. And then introduce yourself without using any jargon.
Introduce without jargon. Anybody else? Other keepers or action ideas? What are some things you plan to do with this? Yes. Keep testing. Keep testing.
Until you get, what is that?
That combination. Yes. Until you get a response. I saw a hand over here. Yes.
Get an audience utterance.
Get an audience utterance. When you get those oohs, those ahs, those raised eyebrows, those smiles, those nods, those are all audience utterances. And that means that here's what's happening. You heard it intellectually, but you also felt it as well. That's what an audience utterance is. Okay, yes?
Yeah, you need to make your pitch clarity, but you want to keep some curious from that.
Exactly. So you want it to be, you want curiosity and clarity. I like that. Curiosity and clarity. Okay, yes.
I have a second round interview on Thursday, and I'm using that line. I'm an engineering professional helping executives stay out of trouble.
Oh, I'm sensing there might be a lawsuit here. But guess what? That's the headline. That's the headline. By the way, you can use this in job interviews.
And I'm updating my LinkedIn.
By the way, this fits on your LinkedIn. It absolutely does. On your resumes, you name it. Any way you're putting your brand. Someone was asking me the question, hey, I don't have a business. How can I use this? You can use this on LinkedIn. Raise your hands if you work for a company and one day you'd like to get promoted. If you have a short tagline that executives remember about you, you have separated yourself from the pack. You have separated yourself from the pack. I happen to, again, I'm a former executive in the computer industry. My dad used to work for Xerox. So I'm very, very fortunate in the fact that I already had a dad who was an executive. And one of the things he always told me, he said, whenever you run into an executive, I want you to do one of two things. He says, number one, ask them a question, how they got started, if they have time for it, or ask them a provocative question, or make a statement. So one time, I used to work in computer franchising. Jim Ciccarelli used to be the president of our organization. One day, randomly, not so randomly, anyway, I was in an elevator with him. I said, Mr. Ciccarelli, I was just reading computer reseller news. We used to make a lot of money from something called market development funds. That is, IBM would pay us anywhere from $100 to $500 for a PC or a server. And they were talking about, and that's how we made all of our profit off of PCs. It was pure profit play. The manufacturers were talking about eliminating MDF. So I'm in the elevator. He doesn't know me from Adam. And I say, Mr. Ciccarelli, I just was reading on the CRM that they're going to eliminate market development funds. What's the impact on our business model? He said, wait, who are you? 1 month later, I was promoted. And I was put on one of the largest projects in terms of us finding new revenue for the company. Just because that advice I got from my dad, and I asked an interesting, provocative question, or I made a bold statement. Are you with me? And that's something that's helped me throughout my career. You are in the marketing business even though you work for a company. You're an entrepreneur even though you work for a company. Because I'm assuming that you like to be promoted. I'm assuming that you like to be acknowledged. I'm assuming that you like to be and maybe make more money. I don't know what it is for you. But this applies in your world in addition to being an entrepreneur or a solopreneur as well. Okay, makes sense? Good stuff? All right, last one.
Focus on the results or benefits instead of describing what you do.
Yes, okay, thank you. Okay,
Yeah, about interviewing, I interviewed some employees, and I think one of the questions you said, what and how?
Yes.
It was very interesting to ask what interests you about this position. I always ask, tell me about yourself, which is a made-up questions from them. But if you ask what interests you in that position, I think we'll just open up more of that.
By the way, here's a follow-up question, okay? What else? My favorite question in an interview setting is what else? Tell me more about that. Now, I won't say what else, what else, what else, what else, but I'll come up with different variations. What I like to do is dive deep on one topic or one subject. So I would say, what interests you in that topic or subject? They give me their answer. They give me their rehearsed practice answer. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Okay? And then I said, well, tell me a little bit more about that. Let's dive a little bit deeper. And then they give me another answer. And what else? Now, here's what happens. They're not ready for the third level, what else? And they're definitely not ready for the fourth level, what else? And I'm willing to go 5 and 6 levels deep. Now I've got the real person in front of me. I don't have the rehearsed, the practice. I don't have the ChatGPT person in front of me. I've got the real person in front of me. And I am willing to ask that question to the point where it feels excruciating, where it feels uncomfortable, because guess what? I'm betting my career on this person. I'm betting my career on this person. So guess what? I'd rather you be comfortable, we both be comfortable in this setting, so I find out who I've got in front of me as opposed to being surprised later on. Are you with me? And by the way, for those of you interviewing, you might prepare. Practice your what if responses. All right, let's move on from here. I want to close the loop. Remember, we have an open loop. By the way, this is engineered by design. I deliberately wanted to open up with curiosity. I gave you 5 statements here. Engineer wins a $2 million contract. A soldier has a $30,000 keynote. An attorney wins the world championship of public. Oh, this is not the right one. Okay, this is not the right loop. But I will finish this. This is engineer. Her name is Bonnie Elwood. Bonnie's going to be in my new book, Winning High Stakes Presentations. And we describe specifically, by the way, Bonnie is a Toastmaster. Bonnie was 2 years prior to her winning the $2 million contract, she was unemployed. She was unemployed. She won a contract. She was competing against 7 or 8 other engineering companies, and her idea was the only one that was accepted by using some of the ideas that we've talked about here today. This is a lady by the name of Kathy Armias. Kathy's actually spoken in Toastmasters. I think she's actually spoken on the international stage. I'm not in terms of making presentations. I think she's applied for accredited speaker. And anyway, so she's written this book called Unbreakable Rules. And one day we were speaking in Mexico. And then she was telling me about some of her clients. Her clients are a who's who of corporate America. I mean, some of the biggest companies on planet Earth. And then she told me how much she charged. And I was stunned. So Kathy was guilty of over-delivering and under-promising. Does anyone familiar with this? I mean, in terms of she was working so hard, but she was she was undercharging, I should say. She was undercharging. She was over-delivering and undercharging. I convinced her to triple her fees, and she did, and she is healed, all right? So she no longer undercharges, all right? This is Christine. This is in COVID. This is like the year 2000 when COVID was heating up. She had an opportunity to interview for her dream job. This is a job she had been actually going after for 13 years. The opportunity finally came up, and again, using some of the ideas and strategies we talked about here today, she was able to get that done. This is another one of my clients. She is an executive in, let's see, God, what is it is called? There's a new technology in hard drives. What's a Mac Air? What type of hard drive does that have? SSD. So she's an executive in that industry, and her income has gone up by $100,000. Aaron Beverly is one of my coaching clients. However, I did not coach him on his World Championship public speech. Okay, he's been one of my clients since 2013, but I had nothing to do with him winning the 2019 World Championship of public speaking. However, I did help him double his salary in his project management job. Aaron was an example of an individual who was way underpaid. Way underpaid. I could not believe when he told me how much he was making. And by the way, I've spoken 19 times for the PMI, Project Management Institute. I've been a keynote speaker for them 19 different times. So I knew that where he should be in terms of his finances, in terms of making income. Anyway, we got him double the salary, and we helped him get another position with another company who truly appreciates what he's about. Anyway, so these are people who have my coaching clients, etc. And one of my superpowers is helping people to change their mindsets. Let's talk about Aaron. Aaron, and a lot of people do this, is they look through the window rather than looking at the mirror. What do I mean by that? Do you remember the early days of COVID? The early days of COVID, no one knew what to do. Guess what? We were all looking out the window. What is this person doing? What is everyone else doing? We're all looking out the window as opposed to looking in the mirror. And when you look in the mirror, you decide what you're going to do differently. So for example, I'll never forget Aaron. So it's 2019. He's one of my coaching clients. I says, Aaron, let's start working on your speech. He says, Ed, I've got this. And I says, what do you mean? He says, Ed, he said, I've been looking in the mirror. And what that meant was that he was ready. He was ready. And I remember thinking to myself, it's January of 2019, I said, he's going to win. He's going to win the world championship just based on that mindset. And he pulled it off. Again, if you're interested in my offer, I'm only going to be here for probably another 30 minutes or so, but I got to catch a flight. I have family obligations. If I don't make the family obligations, I will be sleeping on the couch. Anybody here know what I'm talking about? Okay. So if you're interested, my little card reader thing is working. So again, 197 if you're interested. We're going from there. All right, homework. This is the last page of my handout. And this is what I call the 1-minute pitch. The 1-minute pitch. You don't even have to take a lot of notes on this because it's pretty detailed. The 1-minute pitch is after you have confirmed someone's interested in your ideas, your topics, your subjects, whatever that may be. And let's see. Step number one, if you're making a 1-minute pitch, number one, just pause. Just relax. Do you remember, for those of you who were with us yesterday, do you remember what Pat did? She says, sometimes we just have to put our hands in our hearts and just relax and rest into it. That's what I'm inviting you to do. Whenever you have something that's really important, pause, take a breath. If you look at my championship speech, it's called One of Those Days. Another thing that kind of separated me from the pack is by design, I deliberately walked out onto the stage. I didn't do anything. I paused for 7 seconds. I deliberately paused. It did several things. Number one, it separated me from the other competitors. Number two, it completely calmed me down. And then I was ready to go. So there is a value in pausing before you begin anything important. For that interview you're going to take a deep breath, pause, and say, I've got this, okay? Explain your business or your proposition in a single sentence. Guess what? That's what you just did. That's your verbal business card. That's step number 2. Step number 3, frame the problem. So there's an example here of framing the problem. Every day, 10 people die from drowning. We have developed a patent-pending bracelet that inflates when there is too much agitation in the water. Our solution reduces a child's risk of drowning by 90% compared to a life-saving jacket. That's positioning the problem. That's elaborating a little bit more on what you do, okay? And then you talk about your solutions, why they can't live without it, and then you ask, what is your KFD? What do you want that person to know, feel, or do? So this is spelled out for you on this document, and here's your homework assignment. I want you to test it. I want you to test it. All right. I've got exactly 10 minutes. Is that correct? Okay. What questions do you have? By the way, this is in the handouts. You don't have to take pictures. It's right here. It's right here. Yes. Yes. Yes.
You talked very early on in this presentation about no story, but yes to a sentence. Although you spent the morning session talking to us about how important stories are.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you put that dichotomy, that seeming dichotomy together?
Well, what I would do is the verbal business card, think of it as a headline, if you will. It's the subject line of your email, etc. It's the attention grabber. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to grab people's attention first. Then you can actually give that miniature story. But I don't want you to lead with the story. Because like a person can be thinking like, okay, when is this person going to get to the point? Like my dad is a very, like, what do you want? Here it is, now go away. He's one of those people, you got to get to the point very, very fast. So that's the purpose of the verbal business card. Give that first. It's only 10 words or less. Ideally, 10 words or less. You grab their attention. Now you can go into the explanation I just read. Just a miniature story, a short story. Okay? Anybody else? Yes. And if we have questions online, let me know.
Actually, you talked about asking the person the questions, right? And then here you say, in 1 minute pitch, you said, frame the problem. Are you talking about the same thing? Can I ask questions to frame the problem?
Yes, absolutely. You absolutely can. Now, what I was talking about here, the context over here was, we were talking about interviewing. And I'm actually interviewing a candidate. And that's when I'm going to ask those other what if questions. Yes, but absolutely, you can use questions. Questions are a powerful way to engage people.
Yeah, I was talking about, like, you said that you had the pitch line, right? You said, I put a life into your...
Oh, I hope executives breathe life into their business presentations, yes.
Then I say, tell me more, right?
Yeah.
And then you say, what kind of presentations you do, right?
So yeah, and the next step is to let me ask you a few questions. So if someone says, hey, Ed, tell me more, let me ask you a few questions.
Right.
So how do you currently use presentations? What do you feel are some of your struggles and your challenges?
Right.
Yes.
So when you ask me those questions, are you doing the framing? Are you framing the problem? Because I'm trying to...
No, okay, so this is separate. This is, let's see. I see what you're saying. I see what you're going. I get what you're going with this. I want to ask them a few more questions before I tell them anything about me, if you will. Okay. Now, sometimes you might just go into a straight pitch. You've got to decide what that is. I personally do not, I would not go into a pitch like this unless I knew more about them.
Right.
So I always want to think like my doctor. So in the middle of COVID, I had double hip replacement surgery. Years and years of running, I just wore both of my hips out. And my doctor, his name, ironically enough, was Dr. Tate, a Harvard-educated surgeon. However, he had one fatal flaw in that he spells Tate incorrectly. He spells it T-A-I-T. I mean, come on. Anyway, but he diagnosed before he prescribed. He asked me literally hundreds, if not thousands of questions about like the type of lifestyle I wanted to have, whatever. And I have customized hips. Well, you know, whenever I'm working with a new prospect or a new customer, a new client, I think like Dr. Tate. I want to diagnose before I prescribe. I want to ask him or her as many questions as possible. And here's what I'm doing. And I get what your confusion is. Sometimes I will make a pitch in the moment if I feel if it's appropriate. Other times I will say to myself, you know what? This is not the appropriate setting for me to diagnose right here. And I'm going to propose, my next step is to propose, how about we get together for 15 or 20 minutes and just have a conversation?
Right.
So that's where I'm going. Am I clarifying it for you?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is that first you make a pitch and I say, tell me more about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I give them my verbal business card.
Right. Yeah. And before you go into your 1-minute pitch, you want to ask me a few questions to like diagnose my situation, and then you can go on with your 1-minute pitch.
Yes.
Okay.
Or it could be something else. I mean, I'm not trying to confuse you. What I'm trying, you have to use your best judgment under all circumstances. I'm not trying to give you a cookie cutter, because life is not a cookie cutter. Are you with me? You've got to make that choice. You've got to make that call. And sometimes that call we make is a mistake. Sometimes I call it premature presentation. How many of you agree that premature anything is not good? Okay. So you don't want to pitch too soon if it's not appropriate.
Right.
So I hope I'm trying to answer you as accurately as I possibly can.
Totally.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
There is a question online.
Okay.
All right. This question is from Namita Nandakumar. How to explain my experience and skill set efficiently in a 1-hour interview?
In a 1-hour interview. How many of you agree that's a different that's a different workshop? I would literally have to have a conversation with you. I mean, this is completely out. I can't give for. Okay, here I can give you some guidelines. Number one, do your homework and do your research on that individual. So here's a technique I use all the time. Recently, I got a government contract, and I always do some form of homework or some form of research. I will look up a person on social media. I will look up their, if they post on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. I will look them up, and I'll do a deep dive on that individual. Right now, it's so easy to do that. And I'll say the following. I say, hey, I'm so excited, to be meeting with you today. I always do homework before I meet with someone, and I was doing some research about you. Would you like to know what I found? Now, what's really interesting is they always have like this worried look on their face. And I never do anything embarrassing. Like, for example, this one company, actually it's a government agency. I said, hey, I noticed that you one time were a disc jockey on this particular radio station. That's how thank you. That's how I paid for my college education. I was a disc jockey on a radio station called FM 107. We had an immediate connection because I did my homework and doing my research. And guess what? We did business. That was probably the quickest business I ever did with a stranger. It was a one-call close because I did that homework and I did that research. So the advice I have for you is do your homework and your research on that person, that individual, etc., and see how you can find the connection. Another executive. She went to school in Las Vegas at NYU. I said, hey, I noticed that you went to school in NYU. By the way, I live here. Immediate connection. We close business. So look for those connections where you can have these conversation starters. Okay? How am I doing on time? I got 1 minute, 2 minutes? All right, I'm gonna stop right here. I'm gonna stop right here, and I have a specific close. I did not, you guys got robbed of a close earlier, and, and because I wanted to stop on time. I wanted to stop on time. And I'm about to close, and I usually close this presentation. It's a poem written by a lady by the name of Portia Nelson. It's one of my favorite poems. It's called An Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters. It is a poem about change. So please turn to your neighbors and tell them that Ed tells it the best. Please turn to your other neighbors and say, we'll see. And it goes like this. Chapter 1. I walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. But it's not my fault. I'm not to blame. I'm not responsible. It takes a long time for me to dig myself out of this hole, but eventually I do. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk, but this time I pretend it's not there. I still fall in. It's still not my fault. I'm still not to blame. I'm still not responsible. It still takes me a long time to dig myself out of this hole. But eventually, I do. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see the hole. I still fall in. It's a habit. This is a rhetorical question. No one has to answer. But how many of you have fallen into the same hole over and over again? But this time I recognize that it is my fault. I am to blame. I am responsible. And the moment I recognize that, immediately I get out of the hole. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around the hole. Chapter 5. I walk down a new street. Chapter 6. Because Toastmasters is a place where leaders are made, we go back to the street and we fix the freaking hole. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Thank you.
Let's give him one more bigger round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
More confident. We just now have more confidence, and we created a verbal business card. In 1 minute, I can just share who I am, and that is what Ed shared with us today. Amazing. Thank you.